record on this. So this is the first one I've done like it since September. So
Okay, no problem. No problem.
I was like, okay, we'll see how this goes. All right. So are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Welcome to the Mixed Dandelions podcast, where we talk about being mixed, military, and moving on. I'm Jennifer. So today's guest is a very old friend, Katie, from my days at Scott Air Force Base. Hi, Katie.
Hello.
All right. So Katie wrote a book. She was also a military brat. But so first, though, I thought we could talk about like you and your military brat, like growing up in the military, and then get to this lovely piece of art. Okay. So why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself? What branch of the military you grew up in? Yeah.
Okay, well, my name's Katie Odie, and the military branch that my mother went into was the Air Force. We arrived at Scott Air Force Base when I was 9 years old, and actually that was our only base. So while a lot of my friends moved around, we did not. We stayed there the entire time she was in the military. And I left at age 17 when I went to college. So I did experience my friends moving, but I stayed right here in Illinois. So that was a different kind of experience for me.
Interesting. Do you know why you guys didn't move around, or like
We turned down the PCS, or the orders where they give you to move away. She turned them down, and she took a job as a flight nurse, so that kept her there for a while. And then when they said she had to go to Turkey, she got out of the service. Just like, I don't want to. Yeah. So.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
Yeah, but my stepdad, he retired. So we're still kind of like a military,
Yeah.
family of vets, uncle's a vet, and so it was definitely a different world for us, being in the military and living on the base, and just the things that we had there compared to where I come from. So it was a good experience. It was good and bad, like most things in life, but I definitely missed a lot of my friends when they had to leave. But I still know some people that I met when I first arrived. So,
So where were you before for the first 9 years before you moved there? Do you remember that at all or no?
Yeah, I was born in Joliet, Illinois, which is up by Chicago. And then we left there and we moved to Smyrna and Marietta, Georgia for like a year and a half, not long. And then she entered the Air Force and requested to be closer to the family, which is how we wound up at Scott back in Illinois.
From Joliet.
Yeah. Definitely kind of, changed our lives. We, come from poverty, so it was a big deal to have, the base housing where a lot of people were like, oh, this housing's not that great. We were excited, it was like us. And just really learning to navigate like a whole new world. And, the military has its own language almost. And just the expectations of what being in the military requires.
So did you guys live on base the whole time that you guys were there? From what, 9 to 17 years old, you said?
Yeah, they moved off base my senior year in high school to Mascoutah, and then moved to O'Fallon after that. So I don't remember where in there she actually left the service. I think that might be why we moved off base, but we were on base the entire time. Yeah, almost. So for
that must, I mean, I feel like that might have been, in my opinion, just at least like a big, I guess, change going from living and growing up on the military base at Scott Air Force Base and then moving off base. Like, did you have a hard time transitioning with that, even though you're still in the same area and the same school, right? But like, I think just the community is quite different, and
it's different. Anytime you move, it's gonna
right.
jarring. My biggest issue is when I went to college and I thought, I likened everything to a military base.
Right.
So I'm on campus and I'm like the BX, and people are like, what? And I'm like, oh, just trying to get rid of some of the jargon that I spoke was a thing. And also, when you're not in the military, you can't just come on the base. So, when
Right.
people go by their childhood home, I can't do that. So it's
Yeah.
like, oh, I lived on right. Look through that gate over there. Okay, like don't get too close. It's, you don't want to get arrested. So it's just kind of like the few times I've been on base, of course, I've gone by my old house, but they've remodeled them so they look totally
It's all
different.
new houses, right?
Yeah, so it's just like, oh man, I don't get to, have that moment, like a lot of people do. So that's something that's different. But for national security, everybody can't just mosey onto a
Right.
military. You know,
No,
um,
because yeah, it's all brand new. Like our houses aren't even there because
yeah,
it's all brand new houses. Like it was
yeah,
even hard for us. My dad took us, so that's the only way we get on the base. And like we were trying to figure out which, like I guess, lot was where our old house was. And there's a couple new streets, and like it's so different now.
yeah. It's easier to get lost, but whenever I'm on the base and I see certain streets, I just have this image of me walking down the
Yeah.
street and meeting friends and just all these certain moments come to mind. So it's definitely, I felt that Scott Air Force Base was a safe place just to be a
Mhm.
kid, that a
I
lot of
agree.
children aren't afforded. And for that, I'm thankful because I did enjoy the privilege of being able to play outside and be
Mhm.
relatively safe on a base. So,
Yeah, I agree. I think, and I feel like that's at least with most bases and Scott Air Force Base. I feel like even though it's got the flight line, I feel like it's kind of a family friendly base.
oh
Like there
yeah.
were a lot of families, and like I don't think I even knew where the barracks were when we lived there. I mean, we were high school, we shouldn't have known.
I
Right?
knew where they were, but I didn't. I never went there, but I
But
knew where they were.
like I didn't find out where the like I didn't even think about it because we were so like the Burger King and the park and the bridge where we all hung out, or like the youth
Yeah.
center and the BX, and those were the bowling alley, movie
Yeah.
theater. Like those were what my mind was being occupied with.
Yeah, I
But I
remember when
left
they
when I
built.
was in 10th grade. So
Oh, you did you?
yeah, well, the summer after 10th grade is when I left.
Okay.
So right
Okay.
before junior year.
I remember when they built the BX. I mean, not the BX, but the Burger King. I remember when they built that, and I was
Yeah.
super excited about it. I remember walking from one side of the base to the next just to go to friend's house.
Yes.
Like it was ridiculous, and
Right?
getting in trouble for crossing the flight line. They're like, an airplane can land on your head. Like, don't cross. Okay, my bad, I got it.
I know it
So
was so far. We were driving, my dad was driving us around, and I was like, this is so far. And we used to walk this.
I walked everywhere, and I'm gonna tell you, I do not now.
I know,
So
like, we're still walking, we're still walking, we're still walking, not there yet.
hours just being outside.
Oh
So
my
it was
gosh.
Scott. Um, Scott First Base it was an amazing experience for sure. I know that not everybody has that, but I think
Right.
Scott was a good base. So
Well, so you were there the whole time. You guys didn't move, so you didn't experience that where you had to leave friends, but I'm sure you experienced then friends leaving you. So like
yeah.
what was that like? How did you deal with that? Like, and then when new people would come in and you would make new friends with people, like what kind of, I guess, what were your feelings and thoughts surrounding that?
My best friend, her name is Alicia Andino, and when she moved, I think they moved to Florida. Excuse me. I was so devastated, and I just not good with sending letters. I realized as an adult that I had ADHD, but I'm not good at like I would write them, but I somehow they won't get in the mail,
Mhm.
or it'd be so far, in between me doing that. So it was very easy for me to lose track of people, even if I really want to. And
Yeah.
that was something that I really regretted. We didn't have social media or even the internet
Yep.
like that back then.
Mm-hmm.
So if you didn't put a letter in the mail, then you just lost track. Um, but my mother did take me to Florida to see her. And I remember that trip being super excited about it. I posted a picture, I think, on my MySpace a long time ago.
That was when social media began, right?
Yes, yes, yes. And so we're friends on Facebook, but it's been so long. Um, but just to be able to catch up, I did appreciate that. So I did have quite a few friends who left. And then I didn't talk to them again until Facebook became a thing. And so I I hated that part of it, but I used to escape in books. I read so much. So books were my best friends when my best friends weren't around. And the funny thing about military life is sometimes people move away, then they wind up coming back because
Yeah.
their parents get stationed back for a different job.
Hmm.
And so you tend to, if you're in there long enough, you may run into the same people, or you might run into
Oh yeah.
friends different base that you knew from a base before. So I've seen that happen. But for me, it was just people coming and going, and I was stationary. So
Yeah. Yeah, that
definitely,
happened to me because we were at Scott Air Force Base. I was kindergarten, I think, and I went to Mesquite Elementary. So then when we went back and I was seventh grade, there were a couple of kids, like I didn't remember them, but like we would talk about elementary school, kindergarten, first grade, and I'm like, oh, that was my teacher. Like and
oh,
then we'd
see,
realize we were in the same classroom. And then there were a few people that because before that second time with Scott Air Force Base, we lived in England, and there were a couple of families that like got stationed at Scott Air Force Base too, because then I would see them and I'm like, oh hey, like on the base. And I'm like,
yeah.
hey, I know you. But
It's
yeah, it
weird like
was so hard to like when we were younger. I mean, now like kids have email and the cell phones, the free
that.
long
Yeah,
distance and
yeah.
um,
Don't have to pay for all that the
I
way we used.
know those
So
phone cards and racking up the bill. So yeah, I feel like now it's I guess a little bit easier, but back then we had to rely on just, those long distance phone calls and then the like writing letters. But even I think even calling from the base to Mascuda was considered long distance.
yeah, it was. For some, they had a different phone service.
Yeah,
It was weird. So
I remember that.
that's why
Yeah.
the base had a lot of the activities that I like. So the dances were fun, getting to spend
Yeah.
the have overnight parties, and the bowling alley, the movie theater. Like it's just everything is like its own little world.
Yep.
In oasis, and um, that's something that someone who comes from a place where it's a difficult situation. It was like a dream come true to have all of that. So I will always like be thankful for the experience of growing up on the base.
So so I guess with saying that, then do you feel that growing up in the military that had more of a positive effect on your life?
It changed all of our lives for the
Yeah.
better. I mean, we went from uh, you know poverty to middle class, and it's it's a huge change. It's a huge shift in just your day-to-day life dynamic, everything. So I can say that it was, I mean, I know my mother was the one in the military, but
Mm.
um, I had a big hand in holding the fort down when she was gone because she was a flight nurse. And so that meant she was gone a lot. Um, and so she was a single mother. And I, I did, I did a lot of work to keep things, smooth. Uh,
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure you did. That yeah, I think the military has its own struggles, but then I think there's also a lot of like uh I guess like yes, privilege. Like we're privileged to have certain supports and certain tools that the military can give, and then that community support. So, and
yeah,
then you had siblings, didn't you?
I had one sister, but I had six cousins that my mother had custody of. So
Oh
I
my
took care of
goodness.
all of those
So it was
children.
what, like
Yeah,
eight of you then?
yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
And
it's a lot.
I was the oldest that took care of them. And I mean, we did have our issues. I mean, you're gonna face
Yeah.
you have the same issues, racism and sexism. My mother was a black woman, and she was an officer. So we had problems with officer wives who didn't have anything else to do but harass us and, you know, that type of thing. And we still had to navigate all of that. But I can say for the most part, it was a positive experience and it did change our lives. So
That's
I
good.
appreciate that.
So, what do you think is something that has stuck with you about growing up in the military? Like now as an adult, something it can be like either an appreciation or like um I don't know, some kind of like a characteristic or just something that you've learned from growing up in the military that that still stays with you as an adult.
I learned that overall the mission, and this sounds kind of almost weird for me to say, but the mission comes first. You know, I think a lot of times people forget that when it comes to the military, and they
Mhm.
think of all the things you gain from being in the military, but the mission comes first. So if there's any type of problems, if any security problem, you're a soldier first, and nothing outside of that matters, not your family, not your dreams, not your, your job is to defend the country. And that is something that always stuck with me because my mother was a single parent. And it was, even as a child, it was in the back of my head that if anything happens, that's my only parent. Um, and so that, even because I was the oldest child and because I took care of a lot of things, that's something that sat with me, where a lot of kids, I don't think they even thought about it, but that is
Mhm.
something that sat with me. And it's something that I tell people when they talk about going into the military, you have to understand what you're doing. It's a great opportunity, and always, you know, realize that those benefits are for a reason, because you are giving them your life essentially for however long
Right.
you're in there. And it's not like a job where you can make demands and, say what you are not going to do. No, you are going to do
Right.
this, or there are severe consequences. So that is something that stuck with me, and it's very important because I think a lot of the times we as a nation, we're all about our rights, and it's almost hard to separate. Like, we're a nation about our rights, but you have rights, but when you're in the military, it's what they say goes. So that is a big takeaway that I got from that. It's
Do you
almost
think
like,
so? Do you think with that there was any kind of like lesson learned from that as an adult? So I mean, the importance of, I guess, that work ethic and um sometimes there are just, I guess, more important things that matter.
I mean,
Responsibility. Because I
it,
mean
it
that responsibility fell onto you then, right?
oh yeah, it did. I think what it was that it grounded life for me. This is
Mm-hmm.
what it's about. I mean, we are a nation, and there are other nations out there. I mean, look, we can look at what's going on with Russia and Ukraine now, and you have to understand that the military is there for a reason. You're in the military to protect this country. And when Desert Storm happened, I remember being very frightened. I
Yeah.
remember friends being very frightened because there are, our parents were gone, and a lot of them. And so it's just very humbling. And it's, people, they give their opinions about military life, but until you have to sit with that and realize that that is what we're all here to do in this
Mm-hmm.
place, it brings you together, and it solidifies like our role in keeping the country safe, even as the children of military parents, because they have to worry about us
Yeah.
while they're gone. And so it's a very unique experience, I should say. But it's also a life-changing experience for so many people in more ways than one. So, like, you
Right.
got life-changing benefits that come with that sacrifice. So give and take.
Yeah. I
Sure.
agree. Yep. So then what was it like for you to adjust like when you went to college? So you went straight from being an Air Force brat to still being in college, and you still have like your ID card in college and
Oh
stuff?
yeah. I
Yeah,
kept
so
that.
then what was that switch from being in the military to a civilian, and then when you had to give up your military ID card and then you were a true civilian?
Oh yeah. Once
Was
I
that
got
transition like for you?
it was difficult. Once I got married and I was and aged out of being able to stay on my stepdad's benefits since he did retire. Um, it was just kind of like, like I said, not being able to go on the base when I wanted
Mm-hmm.
to. Um, I kind of got that back when, my ex-husband worked for the Department of Defense on Scott, and so our youngest son went to childcare on the base, and so they were able to give me an ID to get on and off, but I could only
Mm-hmm.
go to the daycare center.
Oh,
That's
really?
yeah, to get
Oh,
home.
interesting.
So even though I was a federal employee, I didn't work for the Department of Defense, and so that I couldn't get my own ID card. So I was like, that was a bummer. So just not having those those things. It's a different feeling when it's not that close knit community. It's not that you're not surrounded by a wall and soldiers protecting you. The
Yeah,
world seems bigger and a little scarier. Um, and as you can see, the world is bigger and scarier. The country is scarier. Um, we didn't even have gun issues then like we do now.
right.
But even with that, it was weird to be able to come and go wherever without having to, check in and show an ID and be waved in and, just it was a different like it was like almost moving to a foreign country, you know,
Yeah.
learning the
And
lay
it's
of the
so
land.
close too, because like you just moved right outside the base, like in the next suburb over. So it was so close. It's not like it was, an hour away, so you didn't have to think about it too much. Like,
Yeah, when I left the base for that, that last year of high school, I mean, I went to the same high school, so that didn't change, but just a lot of the kids that grew up in that town, they all knew each other
yeah,
and they had certain traditions that they did and places they went to that I was just like, oh, I don't want to do this. I want to
yeah,
go here, but I can't. So that was hard, but I was also driving by then, so I could still, I had friends who could, sign you on the base.
yeah,
It was a different process. So I had the proximity, but it wasn't until I went away to college that it really hit home that there's a whole new world out here because I essentially grew up on the military base and you know things aren't as secure, I shall say, as base living. People experiences, I've learned as I've gotten older that people see the world how they experience the world,
hmm, yes,
Um, and so I'm very comfortable with myself. I am fine with how I do things. I also am willing to grow and learn. If someone thinks that, I'm trying too hard, well, maybe in your world that is true and that's valid for you. For me, this is what you're gonna get. And if
yeah,
you can take it or leave it, and I prefer you leave it if it doesn't if it doesn't work for you.
yeah,
I used to take things personally. It used to hurt me more, but not so much now. And
yeah.
maybe the writing community has really helped absolve me of that. Because if you want to know how it feels to be tough skinned, you try to write a book and get it traditionally published, and you will see it is brutal. Like all the rejection and everything. It's years of no, years
Oh
of
my.
yeah.
Well, let's, I guess, segue into this beautiful piece of work here, Every Other Christmas. So, what interested you in writing a children's book specifically?
I've always well, I love kids. They're funny. A lot of people used to follow my Facebook because I would always tell these stories. My children fascinated me, how they saw the world. They're loud and wrong all the time, but they're so just quirky and they're so open and they're so full of wonder. So I like telling stories already. And it allowed me to get into my inner child that I felt like I really didn't get to be almost. I was so responsible and I had a lot on me as a kid. And so that inner child has been screaming to get out, and I get to do that when I write these books. So that and the fact that sometimes life is hard for kids and
Mm-hmm.
we gloss over that. We don't think that the hard things we did with affects them, and it does. And so sometimes you want to write stories. For me, I want to write stories with heart, like every other Christmas, that can resonate with them and that can show them that even in a tough situation, it's going to be okay, or it can be okay. Um, and then I do have my comedy books, which is mainly what I write because sometimes we just need to laugh. I
I
don't
think
like
yes,
tragedy.
oftentimes.
Yeah. This, I don't like tragedy. It's a form of entertainment. Let me tell you, life has enough of that all on its own. So that's what really got me to writing for kids as a mainstay in my writing career. I will write stories for adults and I do write poetry, but I love kid literature, kid lit.
Okay, well, now let's segue, I guess, into the topic, the subject, which, so as a myself being a mixed race, mixed ethnic person, as well as raising children who are even more mixed ethnic, like I love that books with this kind of, I guess, subject matter is there's a more of it coming out. And so as I'm reading it, like I thought of my children a little bit, and even though, my husband and I were raising our family, in one household, but we still try to introduce everything. So like, you've got your main character, the families are separate, right? The parents
Right,
are not together, but they come from two different cultures. And so he's
right,
able to experience that with both. So you got what the American culture, I guess, and then you've got a Colombian culture, and he's able like the food, the music, the traditions, and even just like the environment. And so, and I think that like I said, coming from a mixed person, I think that like I love seeing it because like you said, it resonates and like you can relate to it. And so what made you decide to write about this?
oh, several things. Because this book is about a lot of things all at once,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because life is like that. It's not just one thing. Um, I divorced my children's father and I got divorced. And they had to experience, the back and forth. That was something that was very difficult for me as a parent, because you want to spend all these moments with your children, but at the same time, it's like, well, I want my kids to be happy. So that was I wanted to show that this can be positive, and I saw a lot of fighting amongst parents who were no longer together and the children were in the middle. And I thought that this is an important story to tell, you know, from a positive standpoint. And that's how come the mother and the father, you see them happily exchanging and having each other's picture in their home and things like that that I find to be important. As
Yes.
far as the mixed cultures, there are a lot of mixed race children in my family. There are a lot of mixed race children in the world. I have a lot of friends who are mixed race. And there always has been this uh, weird consensus that I've heard that you need to choose which what are you, especially if you're mixed with black. Oh, you're just black. Well, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm a proud Black woman, but I'm also a respecter of different people's cultures. I don't think a child should have to choose one family over the other. I think that is actually very damaging. Um, and so I'm like, what's wrong with enjoying both aspects? Um, at the time, I was with a Colombian, and their culture embraced me. I loved every everything about Colombia when I went. Um, and so it was a way for me to put it all together and also feature a culture that I think gets a bad rep a lot of the time. Like you can't talk about Colombia without someone bringing up, Pablo
Uh-huh.
Escobar, cocaine and like,
But
you
that's
know
not
that
all of Colombia. That's not just Colombia.
the Colombia is the people, just like the United States. We are more than our most dangerous city. We have traditions and love and values here, just like they do. And so I wanted to just show these two cultures not only living, but living in very similar ways, like different but similar. Um, and I feel like we respect each other more when we get to know each other better. And so that tiny book does all those things for me. All those things that I wanted to put out there into the world, all combined in one. And I really love the story because of that.
Because it
Yeah.
just like it's shocking to me that we still have forms that say choose only one. And I'm like,
Yeah.
the mixed race population is the fastest growing in the country. The census has shown that. And it's not even that the population is necessarily growing, it's just that we now have more opportunity to properly self-identify our race and ethnicity. So I think books like this too help to bring attention to the fact that yes, people are mixed race and you don't have to choose just one. You can, that's your identity.
Right.
So
Race in this country is very weird. I've had some really, actually, I've had hateful comments, just with me being out with my children because, Black comes in all shades. And although my ex-husband was also a Black man, he was a lighter shade of Black. And so some of my children, when they were first born, and in their earlier years of life were very fair skinned. And so I would get stopped and like, get hate comments about the color of my kids, or is that even your child? Or I guess a Black man wasn't good enough for you. And it's like, are you okay? Like, what is happening? Like, it just, so I can only imagine as a mixed child or biracial child, and all biracial children aren't, a certain color. There are plenty of biracial, like if you're mixed with Black, or if Black is one of your races, that you're as dark as I am. And so I think that the colorism and the racism and all of that is so obsessively weird to me.
yes.
Get to know people and just let it be, this authentic connection and not so much about the race of the person. Now, race and culture, we do tend to do certain things. Like I'm not discounting that. Um,
But it's
but I
those
just,
stereotypes and those I guess judgments that
yeah,
perception, those first um like don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing. And
yeah.
like and it's like if you would just let it go, you'd probably be much happier, less stressed. Like
And just facing a lot of racism when I was younger, I did have walls up with non-Black people for a
mhm.
while until I grew, when I went to college and I realized that people are just people in every race and there's going to be problems in every race. So I wrote a poem as an adult, and the first lines are just, I'm more than this. I'm more than my gender. I'm more than my race. I'm deeper than the pigment that colors my face because I am. I'm more than what you see on the outside. I have a heart and memories and talents and love and all these things that you can't see because all you see is a Black woman, and you make assumptions, and you dismiss who I could be for what you have already put in your mind. And so this book is like, look at how we're the same. That's, I intentionally made some of the um, language similar. This is, my family, we have a huge family. My uncles, aunts, and cousins come versus my tios, tias, and primos come. So it's like, it's a different language, but it's the same dynamic. And I wanted to show that because we are not that different. We have some differences between the cultures, but we're all human and we all need love and food and joy and security and all those things. And so I may eat, we eat the same foods prepared different ways a lot of the time. So it's just like learn and if you can afford to travel, or travel doesn't have to be outside the country, but travel could be just to another neighborhood, and you
Yeah.
can meet people and try their foods, and you may like it, you may not, but it makes the world smaller, it shrinks it, but it makes our hearts bigger. And that was the biggest takeaway I wanted people to have when they read this book, or buy it for their children or loved ones.
Well, yeah, it's like it's two different words, but they say mean the same thing, right?
Exactly.
So, well, then what was your process for writing the book?
Well, I started started writing this book in the hospital. I got sick on Christmas, and
Uh,
I was so devastated because it was my year for the kids, and I had bought all the stuff.
oh,
I had an asthma attack, and so I wound up being in the hospital for almost a week actually. And I was supposed to have Christmas with my children, and then they were going to go with their dad, and I was going to go to Colombia and have Christmas, celebrations there. I missed everything. And so I started jotting down, you know, this story where this is a happy, so this could be happy. Like I was trying to really pull myself out of the depression of missing
yeah.
this year
All
with my
right.
kids. And everything, and then I started thinking, well, all these great things. Like if I were my child, what are the things that I'm looking at that's so fun? And I started thinking of what do we actually do for Christmas? Um, and so that was the process of just showing these things um, for both sides. And I did get to finally go to Colombia and, you know, um, experience some of their traditions there. And that's also in the book. Like, they sing Silent Night. It's called something different, but they sing, and sometimes they go to church like we do, but they sometimes they have other things they do. So such as Christmas being on December 24th instead of the 25th, like it is here. So it's the my process was just being open to showing that even though I am making this a parallel story, there are some differences, and that's okay as well. And just making sure that I did my best to authentically portray what the Colombian culture does, at least for the person and the area that he lived in, um, because I'm not Colombian. And so you always want to be careful when you write outside of your experience that you do due diligence, as much as possible to properly show that. So I did ask a lot of questions, and um, I get to eat a lot of foods when I went there. So I tried to, it's so hard to like, how do I explain how this is? So that's why I came up with the flavor song in your mouth, because their food is so flavorful. It's not
Yeah.
like, I wouldn't say a heavy salt taste, but a flavor. It's different. And so I just wanted to be true to that, and give them something to be proud of, hopefully. So I read it today to a kid, and he was biracial, and he was so excited. It was a group of children, but he just so happened to be biracial, and he was like, "Oh my goodness, we have that. My family speaks Spanish." And I was like, "Okay, where are they from?" And he said Nicaragua. And I was like, "Oh, that's wonderful." And so he was just so happy. And then I read this to a group of Black boys, and one got so excited to see some of the foods that he eats with his family in the book. So
Yeah.
it's just to resonate. My goal when I with the writing process of this was to make sure that each side was equally represented and respected.
I
So
think you did
lots.
a good job with that. Yes.
Thank you.
It
Lots of
was
reading.
very, yeah, no, like, because I was reading through it and I was like, oh, and then like you get into it and then like you introduce the other, and you're going back and forth. And I think that that was one thing that I had like thought about when I was like, oh, you did such a great job, like I think explaining both sides. And yeah, like you said, you're not Colombian, but I think that you still did like a really, like you could feel, like for me at least, I could like I could feel it, and I could picture it, and I could sense it, and then the illustrations were amazing too. And I think it was so fun. And then it's funny, yeah, because so like the Christmas and Christmas Eve was something I had to like adjust to, because with my husband, they celebrate more, like they have more celebration on Christmas Eve, whereas when I grew up, like we did more Christmas Day. And but then we also didn't have, because we were always somewhere different, not near like our extended family. So we didn't have like family over and stuff. But then when I moved here with his family, like it was a lot of fun because there's a lot of Puerto Rican food. Like, we love going to one of our friends' house because they will, make the arroz con gandules and the lechon, and we have the pasteles. I'm like,
So
we're
good.
going there for Christmas. Like, yeah,
Ah,
but then growing up, it's funny because and then especially when we were in Okinawa, like my mom, she's Japanese, she's Okinawan, so we would have turkey, and then we'd also maybe have some fried rice, and we'd have gyoza, and but this is what it is like when you live in a multi-ethnic house, or that you have multi-ethnic parents, is you're gonna have both. And like I think it's great because, yeah, like you have your choices. And
it's so when I went to, well, I was in this relationship for almost 5 years. So I felt like I had very, very close ties to the culture. And then when I went over there, I remember I went to a party and they liked me. We danced and I showed them how to do the wobble. It was so funny. And then they were showing me, they were dancing different dances with me. And there was a language barrier, but you can show rhythm and movement. And so I forget the name in Spanish, but like the cornstarch stuff that they throw on you, that got thrown on me. And, I have pictures with it all in my hair. And I had people going, "Oh my God, they ruined your hair." And I'm like, I literally just washed my hair. I mean, you don't go to someone else's culture and get mad when they include you, because
right.
that's a sign of love. Like, you know, it's a sign that they accept you. And so I was actually thrilled that I had that experience. And I also thought it was funny. Like, I think they were like waiting to see my reaction, and I just kind of laughed. I got you, sis. And these are people that I still, have proximity to. So I have lifelong connections with a lot of people that are in Colombia and actually considered moving there at one
Oh,
point.
wow.
It's beautiful there, and yeah, you can do very well with the money you earn over here. I'm going to be honest. And so it's just quiet and peaceful to me where I was. Now, they do have big cities that are, more urban, but I was more in a less populated part, and it was just the peace, just how it called to me. I loved it, and the people were amazing.
So how long were you there? Because I remember seeing your pictures on Facebook and stuff, and you look like you had a lot of fun. And
I was there several weeks.
oh my
Um,
gosh, was it that long? Oh, wow.
several weeks, and I wanted to go right back, but COVID came and that knocked all of my travel plans out, because I went to Bogota, San Gil, Barichara, Bucaramanga, and I wanted to go back and go to Cartagena, which I was supposed to go to this year, but I canceled that because I have to promote the book. Like, I'm like, I just came back from Europe, and I'm like, I can't have a book come out and I'm not here. So I was like, I'll put all other travel on hold until 2023. But I will be
Yeah.
going to Colombia. It's too beautiful of a place for me not to return. So
Yeah. Oh.
to Las Vegas in May, and we had a Uber driver who spoke Spanish, and we were like, "Do you speak English?" He's like, "No, I think he did." It was so funny. Well, we all started talking to him in Spanish, and he was like, "Oh my goodness!" Like, he was so excited.
But I
So
think people appreciate that.
they do. Just try, even if you bungle it, which I do all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one thing that can be taken away for sure. Um, is that I respect culture, I respect the people, and I'm here to listen. Like, if there's any missteps even within that book, I'm here to listen and learn and grow. But I teach my children to respect uh, everyone's culture, even if you don't agree with it or you don't understand it. Um, so
That's
that's
awesome. So what's next? What
Well,
writing book?
yeah, I've written 10 books so far, and I'm working on number
Oh
11.
my goodness.
Yeah, some of them are novels, some of them are picture books. I also started my own publishing company called Phoenix Media and Books. And the first book will be published early 2023. It's called
Wow.
Sister, and it's a foster to adoption story told from the point of view of the sister that, her parents are fostering. And
Oh, that's so great.
we don't think about how that affects children when you bring children in and they bond and they have to go back.
Mm-hmm.
So, the point of fostering is to reunify those displaced children with their families. But it still can be, it's a noble thing to do. It's beautiful. And the woman who wrote it, Leah, I can't believe I said that. She's actually a great friend of mine. Her name's Leah Johnson. Leia was also a military spouse, and she's still a military spouse. And they've adopted two children. They had two biological children. And she's a champion of women's rights issues. And she comes from just a great family. So this story is absolutely beautiful. And I had to publish it. I'm so thankful that she trusted me enough to let me do that. So be on the lookout. We're going to be releasing the cover image this month. It's gorgeous, and Samantha Winkler, the same person who illustrated Every Other Christmas, did the illustrations for Sister. And by the way, just so you know, the people in Every Other Christmas are drawn or illustrated after members of my family on the.
Oh, really? Oh, that's
Oh
great.
yeah. Oh yeah. So I may do a post if everyone agrees. Like, okay, here's the illustration. Here's my stepdad, and
You're gonna be like real life and picture.
yeah, funny. It's funny. So those are the little things you get to do when you create. And so the publisher, Sky Pony Press, allowing that me to choose my illustrator really did help. And just having that closeness, because that doesn't always happen in publishing, where you
Mm-hmm.
can add elements that are very important to you. So
Oh, well, that like, and it sounds like you are working more on trying to get like those are different perspectives. It's not something like at least for me, like that's not something I hear about, like with books and stuff like that. Like you're not hearing that on the mainstream, like topics like that and perspectives like that. And so I think like with your book and then with that new book that you said is going to be coming out, like those are it's an interesting perspective. And I think a lot of people how they're saying representation matters. And I think like that's becoming more important and more people are becoming more aware of that. And so coming out with those different pieces of work that do have different perspectives, it's
yes,
nice to see. It's nice to know that people are thinking about that and are doing something about it. Because yeah, like I have a friend who they did a foster to adopt and they had two kids, and like it's just yeah, like those are things that I guess you don't want to feel left behind. And so I
yeah,
think that's great.
you have to, with my publishing company, I'm not so much trying to change someone else's mind. How someone else
Mhm.
runs their company is how they run it. I would like for them to be more open. I want to see people of different, races and religions and genders just living life. I don't want the books to be just about their race or gender or, sexuality. It's just them living. And I think that humanizing, seeing the human side of everyone just brings us closer together. We have way too much infighting. And so this is my little contribution. I have an author who's Jewish who's got a picture book coming out. Um, and we talked about it, and I'm like, I'm interested in your voice as a person, you
Mhm.
know. Um, and so it's very important to me to give opportunities, even though I'm a small publisher right now. Um, hopefully I get to grow. Hopefully the books resonate with people and they support. But it's very important to me that that be the footprint that I leave. Is that I'm sorry, my dog's losing it.
I was like, is
Um,
that my dogs or your dogs?
Someone must be outside, and I'm so sorry about that.
No, don't worry
I
about it.
ran the risk of not being in my bedroom doing this, but giving people a voice, an authentic voice to see who they are in this world besides what mainstream media paints them to be.
Well, so you can get your book on Amazon, right?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Books a Million, Walmart, Target, on my website, it's everywhere.
Awesome. And then,
Yeah,
is there anything else you want to add or share or
yeah.
contact
I want
information or?
Hey, thank you so much for thinking enough of me to have me on the podcast. I want to thank anyone who is listening, um, just for caring about what I have to say. If you want to talk or reach out to me, my website is Katie Odie Writes, KatieOtieWrites. I had to spell the correct right. .com. And I'm Katie O'Reilly on all social media, and I have a YouTube channel as well. I'm a little wacky, so be forewarned. But you know, I love to hear from you, and I love if you read the book and you love it, to please leave a review online because that matters. Please gift the book, and if you want to invite me out for author visit, I'm willing to do that as well. So thank you so
Uh,
much.
no, it's a great book. I love it. And thanks for coming on. It was a lot of fun catching up and talking.
Yes, yes. You're welcome.